Hello, my students. I hope you guys are all staying safe and maybe getting outside. It's sunny out today, so enjoy the backyard or take a bike ride or walk, but make sure you're socially distancing and being healthy and safe. I want to talk to you about the answer section in Cold Blood with Truman Capote. I held off to posting it for this week because I think a lot of the critical passages occur a little bit later in that text, so you'll be reading them this week. I would recommend that you listen to this video before you take your quiz. I do want to mention one thing on your journals. You're going to write one more journal this week. It's your last one. I know you're done, and I know you love them. But some of you are losing points unnecessarily. You are not including the figurative language. Make sure that when you're selecting a quote that supports your theme, that you say, this is evidence showing the simile that's comparing this and this. You know, use the language when you're introducing your quotation. You can say, Capote uses such detailed imagery to show the contrast between the Clutters and Dick and Perry. So use it in your signal phrase, or afterwards explain what it is. But make sure you're doing that. Okay, let's get started. In the answer section, things that you've probably been wondering about as a reader will be answered. So that's the appropriate name for it. On page 160, in the beginning of it, we kind of learn that there is a living witness, which is important because, remember, Dick and Perry from the beginning were like, leave no witnesses, leave no witnesses. So we know two things. It was a premeditated murder. They had no intention. They were talking about blasting hair all over the walls, leave no witnesses. They had no intention of leaving those people alive. So we also know that it's premeditated. And then we know that there is a living witness. Now, they don't know who that is, but we learn on page, you actually were introduced to him a little bit earlier, but you may have skipped over that. We learn Floyd Wells. On page 160, it says, Wells was stunned as he was eventually to describe his reaction. He didn't hardly believe it, yet he had good reason to, for not only had he known the murdered family, he knew very well who had murdered them. And as you go on to read, you learn that Dick and Floyd had celled together, and that Floyd had kind of spilled the beans inadvertently about working for Mr. Clutter, and that he was a really wealthy man, maybe had a safe. So we know a little bit more about motive, why Dick and Perry ended up going to this place. It was to rob him. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it's probably not the best choice of words, but we know that they didn't come away with much. They murdered 4 people for fewer than $50. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's look at page 160. I feel like it's kind of like the perfect storm, you know, how this all happens. Of course, Dick and Perry meet each other at the top of 160. I believe it's Perry talking, and he says, if I would never have met Dick, then maybe Mr. Clutter wouldn't be in his grave. But there you are. There it is. I come to meet Dick. So I think a lot of things happen that night when they're in the house that just build and build. At one point, you know, Perry wants to kind of walk away, and he doesn't. And had he, I don't know that Dick would have ever been able to do those murders without Perry. So, you know, there's a lot that happened that all just became that terrible perfect storm. Okay, let's look at page 171. Nye is at Dick's parents' house, and he kind of sees in the corner, he's scanning the room, he sees the shotgun. And he says at the bottom of 170, that's his gun, Dick's. Him and David go out once in a while after rabbits, mostly. That's Dick's dad talking. Now we have the description. It was a 12-gauge Savage shotgun, model 300, a delicately etched scene of pheasants in flight, ornamented the handle. How long's Dick had it? Okay, and then they go on and talk about it. He's only had it like less than a month or something and been used one time, and they wanted to return it and they're not able to. So Nye is seeing the shotgun. So he's getting more and more curious and knowing that this could definitely be the people they've been looking for this whole time. In section 4, like I told you guys, you will not be doing a journal. You are going to do those body bios, which were all up in my room, and you got to see those all year long. So hopefully you kind of have a little visual of those. But one of the characteristics is an inner and outer person. So on page 182, they are interviewing Bobo, who's Barbara, same person, Perry's sister. And she had never told Perry that she had moved because she's afraid of him. She is very well aware of his mental instabilities, which you guys should definitely be picking up on, that neither one of these two is normal. So probably about 3/4 down the page, she considered him and unable to decide. She said she didn't know. This is Barbara talking now. But I'm afraid of him. I always have been. He can seem so warm-hearted and sympathetic, gentle. He cries so easily. Sometimes music sets him off. And when he was a little boy, he used to cry because he thought a sunset was beautiful, or the moon. Oh, he can fool you. He can make you feel sorry for him. So Barbara is totally aware that her brother has this erratic sympathy and erratic feelings. He can make you feel sorry for him and then go do something totally crazy, you know. So you're starting to see some of that psychosis. In section 4, you will learn, if you don't already know, exactly what's wrong with Perry and with Dick. So they definitely both have some things. But I thought that particular passage gave you a good idea of the inner Perry versus outer Perry. He can like look calm, and inside there is this rage, and he can also pretend to make you have sympathy for him when he's getting ready to probably murder you. So inner and outer are not the same. Okay, let's go to page 188. A good example of evidence for the perversion of the American dream. Okay. So they're out of money. Dick wants to go back to Kansas City, which is a crazy idea, and Perry's aware of that. But again, it's about probably 3/4 down. But Dick was not able to be dissuaded. Kansas City, he again insisted, was the one place he was certain he could successfully hang a lot of hot paper. So he's not speaking literally here. When he says hang a lot of paper, he's metaphorically talking about writing bad checks. Why people would take a check from Dick, I have no idea, but they did, lots of them. And so he was writing bad checks and, of course, getting some money. So again, they want to spend Christmas in Miami. They want to stay for the winter if it looks good. They want this American dream, but they don't want to work for it. They want to do illegal things and ill-gotten gain to get that. Let's go to page 201. Now, throughout this book, certainly the most well-developed character is Perry. We learn way more about Perry than we ever do about Dick Hickok. Truman Capote was a little bit more fixated with Perry. He spent additional time with him after the murderers were apprehended in jail and awaiting sentencing and trial and everything. Capote actually went and interviewed Perry Smith extensively. So that's why you learn more about him. I think they had a very strong connection. But in this particular section, we learn some disturbing information about Dick. So Dick on page 201. Okay. That's about the first paragraph on the page. Now, a young girl, probably 12, was drawing figures in the sand, carving out big, crude faces with a piece of driftwood. Dick, pretending to admire her art, offered the shells that he had gathered. "They make good eyes," he said. The child accepted the gift, whereupon Dick smiled and winked at her. He was sorry, he felt, as he did about her, for his sexual interest in female children was a failing of which he was sincerely ashamed. A secret he'd not confessed to anyone and hoped that no one suspected, though he was aware that Perry had reason to, because other people might not think it normal. And remember, Dick, his famous phrase is, whatever, I'm a normal baby. Deal me out. I'm a normal baby. He's not normal. He's a pedophile. He has interest in young girls, and that is not normal. So this is a glimpse into that. Let's go. The very end, of course, is huge, you guys, and make sure you're definitely, focusing on those pages because they're very important. Go to page 240. Okay. I think this is some good evidence that is that would support the theme, the perversion of the American dream again. They're inside the Clutter house, and this is when Perry is telling basically everything that happened that night. You learn, in vivid detail, everything that went on. Dick stood guard outside the bathroom door while I reconnoitered. I frisked the girl's room and I found a little purse, like a doll's purse. Inside it was a silver dollar. I dropped it somehow and I rolled it across the floor, rolled under a chair. I had to get down on my knees. And just then it was like I was outside myself, watching myself in some nutty movie. It made me sick. I was just disgusted. Dick and all his talk about a rich man's safe, and here I am crawling on my belly to steal a child's silver dollar. $1, and I'm crawling on my belly to get it. Now, when you're talking about things like this, like if you want to use a quotation like that, talk about the imagery. You can see this man, a grown man, crawling on his belly to get a silver dollar, Okay. Okay. On 241, I think that we get another insight into Perry. Okay. Dewey asks him, so were you using the flashlights or did you turn on the basement lights? I'm on page 241. The lights. The basement was divided into two sections. One part seemed to be a playroom. Took him to the other section, the furnace room. I saw a big cardboard box leaning against the wall. A mattress box. Well, I didn't feel I ought to ask him to stretch out on the cold floor, so I dragged the mattress box over, flattened it, and told him to lie down. Okay, and this was something that Dewey in particular had really kind of contemplated, like, is there this, did the killers have some compassion, some sympathy for Dick and Perry, or for Dick and Perry have some compassion and sympathy for the Clutters? And yes, Perry has this erratic compassion and sympathy, which again tells you something's not all firing on all the synapses up here. Tells you what he does. And then if you look at, then they go on to explain everything that happened, who they taped up and who they did not. So you can kind of read through all that and pay attention. And we're going to look at page 243. Okay. This is where we also learn that Perry, while he's okay killing people, is not okay with Dick being a pedophile or raping someone. That is off the table. He is not going to let that happen. So on page 243, he says, right, then I started with Mrs. Clutter. I made Dick help me because I didn't want to leave him alone with the girl. That's Nancy. I cut the tape in long strips and Dick wrapped them around Mrs. Clutter's head like you'd wrap a mummy. And he asked her, how come you keep on crying? Nobody's hurting you. And he turned off the bedside lamp and he said, good night, Mrs. Clutter, go to sleep. Then he says to me as we're heading along the hall toward Nancy's room, I'm going to bust that little girl. And I said, but you'll have to kill me first. He looked like he didn't believe that he'd heard right. He says, what do you care? You can bust her too. Now, that's something I despise. Anybody that can't control themselves sexually, Christ, I hate that kind of stuff. I told him straight. I said, leave her alone, else you've got a buzzsaw to fight. That really burned him. But he realized it wasn't the time to have a flat-out free-for-all, so he says, okay, honey, that's the way you feel. The end of it was we never even taped her. We switched off the hall light and went down to the basement. Okay, so I think that's very telling of Perry. He definitely has these lines in the sand that you cannot cross. He does not respect Dick for not being able to control himself. And, he's okay with murder, but this, no. Page 244. I'm going to end here. Obviously, there's more that goes on, but I thought if we were in class, I would have you guys discuss this. And after you hear this line, I want you to think, do you have sympathy for Perry? As a reader, do you feel sympathy for him? Capote is supposed to be an objective narrator. And I say supposed to be because I'm not quite sure that he is. In my opinion, I think he paints a little bit more and gives you a little bit more information about Perry to maybe create a little bit of a sympathy. If he's a truly objective narrator, I don't think we would feel sympathy for Perry. So what do you think about this? Page 244. He says, okay, Mr. Clutter and the boy, just before I taped him, Mr. Clutter asked me, and these were his last words. He wanted to know how his wife was, if she was all right. I said she was fine. She was ready to go to sleep. And I told him it wasn't long until morning, and how in the morning somebody would find them. And then all of it, me and Dick and all, would seem like something they dreamed. And I wasn't kidding him. I didn't want to harm the man. I thought he was a very nice gentleman, soft-spoken. I thought so right up until the moment I cut his throat. So, do you feel sympathy for him? I want you to think about that. All right. I hope you guys are doing well. This will all be over at some point. We'll see each other again. Email me if you have any questions. You guys email my school email, okay? I do not check Canvas every single day, and I only see that email if I'm in Canvas. My school email I see all the time. Good luck. Most of you are doing very, very well, so continue. I miss your smiles and your laughter. So can't wait till we can see each other again. Peace out.